Welcome into the On3 studios here in Nashville, Tennessee. Today's Wednesday, July 10th. I'm your host, Josh Newberg. This is the Inside Scoop, and we have a big show today. There's a lot of commitments going down this weekend. We're going to have some final predictions. But before we get rolling, hit subscribe to the On3 Recruits channel, the best recruiting channel on all of YouTube. So go ahead, hit subscribe. All right, so I want to show you guys what the top 10 looks like right now. Honestly, I don't even know why I'm doing this, because the decisions that are going down this weekend are going to reshape what this top 10 looks like. But for reference purposes, let's look at it on Wednesday compared to what it looks like when we tape on Sunday. So Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia, Oregon, LSU, that's your top 5. We know the Ducks are surging. LSU has some big commitments on tap. So does Georgia, Alabama, and Ohio State. It's a big weekend. Then you got Notre Dame, Clemson, Texas A&M, Oklahoma, and Michigan at number 10. Michigan is in the top 10. Then you got FSU, Miami, Auburn at 11, 12, and 13. Texas at 14, Mizzou at 15. You know those teams all want to get inside the top 10, and they have big decisions going down this weekend as well. Tennessee, Penn State, USC, Rutgers, and Kentucky round out your current top 20. And I say current because there are some big decisions on tap. All right. Before we get into the show, I want to preview a couple July commitment dates that are going to shake up the recruiting world. Let's take a look right now at wide receiver Travis Smith. He makes his decision, as you can see, on July 13th. That is this Saturday. We got a bunch of wide receivers making decisions this Saturday. All right, so wide receiver Travis Smith out of the Atlanta, Georgia area. Is it going to be the in-state Bulldogs? Is it going to be Tennessee or Alabama? The expert predictions have been rolling in this week in favor of the Vols. Now, remember, they went into Atlanta last year, different high school, but they pulled Mike Matthews out of the state of Georgia while the Georgia Bulldogs were in pursuit. So look at this SEC battle. Georgia, Tennessee, and Alabama. Right now, it seems like it's trending towards Tennessee as we head into the weekend. All right, another big-time wide receiver making a decision is Derek Meadows. He is from Las Vegas, Nevada, and he's set to decide on Saturday as well. Notre Dame, they've been the team that we talk about the most. When it came to Derek Meadows back in February, in March, in April, it was all about Notre Dame, maybe Michigan as well. But right now, as we come into the weekend, LSU, the Tigers are surging. Yeah, they lost to Corian Moore, but they would love to add the 6'6", 210-pound Derek Meadows. We'll see if the Tigers, this last bit of momentum is enough to take them over the top of the longtime favorite Notre Dame. Remember, Saturday, he'll make his decision. Another wide receiver making his decision on Saturday, another top wide receiver, Dalen McCutcheon. Now, Dalen McCutcheon's battle is a East Coast, West Coast shakeup right here. You got Florida State on the East Coast, and you got USC on the West Coast. Now, of course, Ohio State and Texas also got official visits. They're involved. But when it comes down to decision day, right now, I'd probably give the slight edge to FSU. USC surging. They need some more late momentum if they're going to overtake FSU. Now, remember, FSU pulled C.J. Wiley in June. That was kind of a surprise out of South Georgia. Now they're looking at Dalen McCutcheon, USC, FSU. We'll see what happens on Saturday. All right, just a couple days later, 4 days later, you got DJ Pickett from Zephyr Hills, the 5-star corner coming off the board. LSU, Miami, Oregon, those are the finalists. Now the picks are coming in for Oregon, but hold up. Miami's not going down without a fight. The Ducks and the Canes, well, also LSU. You can't forget about that relationship that DJ Pickett has with Corey Raymond. So I don't know. You guys, let me know. Comment section below. What do we think on DJ Pickett? That one's a tough one. And then also, you got cornerback Jabari Antoine. This is an interesting one because he was committed to LSU for some time. He decommitted about 4 or 5 weeks ago. And now, July 20th, he's ready to make another decision, what I think is going to be his final decision. Right now, there's a lot of buzz around FSU. Of course, I think the door is open for him to go back to LSU. I am not ruling them out, although I do think this is more of an FSU-Miami battle as we head into this July 20th date. All right, the last wide receiver, or the last prospect that I want to talk about when it comes to big July decisions is Vernell Brown III, the borderline 5-star prospect. At one point, it seemed like he was going to head out of state to Ohio State. He's from Jones High School in Orlando, Florida. But right now, as we get closer to this July 21 date, it looks like an in-state battle. Florida, Florida State, Miami, they're all there involved with him. They all got him on official visits, but I think what could give Florida Gators the edge? Family ties. Vernell Brown's father played for the Florida Gators. I think in the end, I like where the Gators sit for that July 21st decision for Vernell Brown III. But like I said, these decisions are going to shape, they're going to remake what that top 10 looks like right now. You guys, let me know. Comment section below. Where do we think some of these top recruits are going to land? Do you agree with me or do you think differently? Let me know. Comment section below. All right. We are going to get into the show. We got a lot to talk about today. We are going to talk Alabama. I'm also going to break down the top 10 wide receivers and where they could end up. I'm going to make it real simple and easy for you guys to understand. All right, let's get to it. Last week, we saw the number 1 ranked wide receiver in America, Dakorien Moore, make a surprise decision. Now, the timing of his commitment wasn't necessarily a surprise. July 4th was the date that he was going to announce. But the team that he went to, the Oregon Ducks, most experts 48 hours out had Texas. Of course, Oregon started trending on July 4th, and he ultimately picked the Ducks. But with his commitment, now there are only 5 remaining wide receivers in the top 10 available, 5 off the board, 5 still remaining. And in this video, we are going to figure out where the remaining 5 wide receivers in the top 10 are going to go. But before we get into it, guys, I need you to do me a favor. Hit subscribe to the On3 Recruits channel, the best recruiting channel on all of YouTube. Jump on board and get subscribed. All right, I want to break this down. You know what? I want to go to the whiteboard for this. We need to go to the whiteboard for this. This is important. I like to do positional breakdown, so we're going to do the wide receivers now. All right, this is the board. These are the On3 rankings. Let me make that clear. These are the On3 rankings. So at number 1, we have Dakorien Moore, and at number 10, we have Travis Smith. These are the teams that want a number 1. Who wants a number 1 wide receiver? Well, Oregon has 2 of them already committed. Ohio State has 1 in Quincy Porter. Talon Taylor, a number 1 wide receiver, committed to Georgia. And then you got Joshua Moore, already committed to UF. So those are the 5 that are committed. Now I want to break down the 5 that are uncommitted. Let's bring in Director of Recruiting Chad Simmons for this. All right, Chad. We got the wide receivers here. We'll skip to number 3 because Dallas Wilson and Dakorien Moore are already committed to Oregon. And we got Lockett here at number 3. He's from the state of Texas, and his decision is set for August 7. Chad, what's the most likely destination right now for Lockett?
Yeah, I think right now, Josh, I lean towards Texas. Obviously, an in-state target. I think he became that much more important to Sark, to Chris Jackson, to that program with Dakorien Moore leaving the state for Oregon over the weekend. I like Lockett to Texas right now. I don't think this is done and finalized, but I do like where Texas stands right now.
Yeah, now Lockett is making that decision on August 7th. So we could very well see him take a visit at the end of July when the dead period opens up for that weekend. What other teams could potentially make a run at Lockett and become the favorite?
We've always had LSU, Steve Wilfong and myself in the mix for them. But I think, honestly, the biggest competition before you make that line too sharp and too deep there, Josh, is Alabama. Of course, Florida State's in there too, Texas A&M. But, I think there's some separation with Texas and Alabama, those top 2 right now battling for that top spot. We're a little bit less than a month away from that decision. But I like Texas 1 or 1A and then Alabama 1B right now for Lockett.
All right, Keelan Russell putting in work in that in-state wide receiver, trying to bring him to Alabama. Also FSU involved. We'll see what happens with Lockett, but that end of July visit weekend could be huge to see where he shows up. All right, let's move to number 4, and we got Caleb Cunningham. And there are rumors, Chad, that Caleb Cunningham could be coming off the board very soon, maybe as soon as this weekend. Who are the real players there? Because I know he's named a lot of number 1 programs over the last 3 months.
Yeah, but one that's been pretty consistent the last few weeks has been Alabama, that top school. I mean, they got the last OV. They had the chance to make the last impression if he was going to make an early decision, which he really wasn't planning to do until he took that visit to Alabama. That really flipped everything upside down from his commitment timeline. Now talking a summer decision, like you said, maybe sooner than later. Bama went in maybe in that top group, but came out the top school. So right now, I like Alabama as the school that's trending pretty heavily for Caleb Cunningham.
All right, so now it looks like Bama with two potential number one wide receivers that they could potentially land if things fall their way. But Caleb Cunningham, I mean, he has named a bunch of favorites this spring, so he's a bit of a wild, probably the biggest wild card of the uncommitted guys. So if Caleb Cunningham didn't end up at Alabama, where do you think he could land?
Obviously he's a Mississippi kid, so you got to look there in state. Mississippi State right there is on your board. That was where my prediction was on the On3 recruiting prediction machine for Cunningham, early in the year, and it stayed that way through much of June until that Alabama visit, again, flipped things upside down. So I think you have to start with Jeff Lebby and the Mississippi State Bulldogs. He will take some trips, I think, during the fall, whether he's committed or not at that time. I think you have to go back to Mississippi State for that school you're watching behind Alabama right now.
Yeah, but, he's also been to Tennessee. He's at one point, didn't he name Auburn? He named Auburn a leader. At one point, I think he named UF his leader, but I agree. I think right now for Caleb Cunningham, Alabama. So we got Alabama and Texas in line, in at least our opinion, to land a number one wide receiver. Let's move on. Quincy Porter committed to Ohio State. They got their number one. Vernell Brown III. This has been a really interesting recruitment because at certain points he's been trending to different teams, whether it's Ohio State, Miami, UF, FSU also involved. But what about Vernell Brown, who is also likely going to make a decision this month?
Yeah, I think he's still kind of finalizing that and kind of locking in that date, but I think it's coming very soon. With Vernell, Josh, we go back a few months. I would say Ohio State's in a great spot. They were trending early in the spring. They got him to Columbus. They got the first official visit that May 31st weekend for Vernell Brown and his family. But I think coming out of those trips, and even before then, maybe mid to late spring, it started trending more towards him staying home in the state of Florida somewhere. And at that time, it's kind of been pretty consistent for me. It's Florida versus Florida State. I kind of emerged at the two schools to watch. FSU got the last official visit, but right now for me, my pick's been on Florida for some time on the On3 recruiting prediction machine. He's a Florida legacy. He has many connections to that program. He's been there many times, and I've always kind of played around. I think he's got some orange and blue blood running through those veins, since he was born. So, again, I'd be a little surprised if someone upsets Florida in this race, but Florida State has given him a lot to think about throughout this process. Ron Dugans, Mike Norvell, but right now I like Florida's position for Vernell Brown III.
Yeah, I like where Florida stands right now, as we could be a couple weeks out from Vernell Brown III, and that would be Florida's second top 10 wide receiver in America. So that would be huge for the Gators. Let's move down to number 8. We got Jamie Ffrench. So Jamie Ffrench has one time been trending to Ohio State. He was committed to Alabama at one point, currently trending to Texas, but we know there's other teams involved. Break down Jamie Ffrench.
Yeah, we had all those things coming out about the three, of Khalid Lockett, DeCorian Moore, and Jamie Ffrench to Texas. Could they get all three? Well, obviously Moore's off the board, at least commitment-wise, verbally right now, to Oregon. So could they be the top two guys, going to Texas? I still lean towards Texas, right now for Ffrench. I mean, the big thing for Jamie, he's been very transparent, is about comfortability, hospitality, where his family feels most comfortable at, and where they connect with as a family the best. I think they've done a great job at Texas doing that. Now, he doesn't commit until August 30th. He's likely to take a few visits that last week of July as well. LSU's very much in the mix. And I'm telling you, people have told me, continue to tell me, do not sleep on the Miami Hurricanes for Jamie Ffrench. That's an in-state program. He took an OV there. They are pushing hard for Jamie Ffrench. To me, that's kind of a dark school to watch in this race. Do not sleep on they don't get as much pub as maybe Texas or LSU in this race, but Miami is very much a threat. But if I'm picking one school that's trending the most today, I like Texas.
All right, so it looks like Texas is in line for their second elite top 10 wide receiver, at least in regards to our breakdown. So now let's move down to number 10, and that's Travis Smith. He's out of the Atlanta, Georgia area. And Chad, I'll let you take this away because you had big news today on the on3.com front page on wide receiver Travis Smith.
Yeah, he had four schools. Obviously, took OVs to Alabama, Auburn, Georgia, and Tennessee. That was really the final four schools. He's pretty much knocked Auburn out of the running there and kind of down to three. And his words to me, what day was it? Tuesday, I guess Monday night, was he was torn kind of between those three SEC programs. Obviously, had very good OVs to Tuscaloosa, Athens, and Knoxville. Tennessee got that last official visit on that June 21st weekend. Really, for me, since that OV, and even maybe a little bit before then, I started to like Tennessee's position the most. Going back to early in the year, I had Georgia kind of as the favorite, but I've been kind of painting the picture in different articles that Tennessee's kind of been coming on strong, competing against Georgia, the in-state program. Kendall Pope, Josh Heupel, the offensive scheme, the players they're bringing in, George McIntyre and company, really appeal to Travis. And I like Tennessee's position the most. Now, Bama and Georgia, there's still communication
Yeah,
there, but
we
I
can see
like where
it.
Tennessee sits today, Josh, for Travis Smith.
Yeah, and I mean, this is a simple breakdown. Now, you can really get a good idea for what's going on here with the top 10 wide receivers in America. This is your roadmap right now. You can see who's landing a top wide receiver and who needs to put in some work over the next couple weeks if they're going to land their number one. Because right now you got Alabama, you got double up on Texas. We got UF, we like to land one of these guys, in Tennessee. So there's 5 remaining in the top 10. We'll see how all this shakes out. But let me hear your guys' opinion. Comment section below. How do you think this is going to shake out? Do you agree with me and Chad, or do you look at the possibilities and think there could be a different ending? Let us know. Comment section below. We're going to talk Alabama recruiting in this video because they are on a march for number one. Of course, Ohio State in the number one spot right now, but Alabama has been red hot all summer. What they did in June has only carried over into July, and there are some big decisions going down this weekend that could impact Alabama recruiting. We're going to talk about it with Bama Online's Tim Watts. But before we get going, Alabama fans, we need you. Hit subscribe to the On3 Recruits channel. We're trying to grow this page. We are the best recruiting channel on all of YouTube, and we need Bama fans to be a part of it, so hit subscribe. All right, let's bring in my guy Tim Watts. And Tim, we got some decisions looming that could very well vault Alabama into the number one spot. So let's talk about it. All right, this weekend, there's rumors swirling that Caleb Cunningham, one of the top wide receivers in America out of the state of Mississippi, is ready to make a decision. Now, we don't know exactly when he's going to do it, but the experts are talking Alabama. Are you buying into the RPM machine that Alabama leads heading into this weekend?
Yeah, Bama Online, Andrew Bone and Joseph Hastings has an RPM, and I've got an official BOL prediction that Caleb will choose Alabama when he commits. Again, the question's kind of been when. I think Alabama gained a lot of momentum with their official visitor. Again, a very elite prospect. They're looking to add to a small class. They got Ryan Williams last year, who technically should have been in this class. So they're looking to add at least a few key guys, and I think Caleb certainly fits the bill. He's the prototypical wide receiver. He's got speed. He's got playmaking ability. He's got size. But I think everything's leaning to Alabama right now. I mean, obviously, if you're an Alabama fan or an Alabama coach, you want to get that behind you. No official date yet, but we keep hearing that that's decisions coming up. And Caleb himself said sometime in July. Well, we're in July.
And it is some time. Yeah, Caleb Cunningham, maybe one of the wild cards for me. And I do agree. I do agree with the experts right now. If I had to put a pick in, it would be Alabama heading into this weekend. But Caleb Cunningham doesn't say a whole lot. And you got Auburn, you got Tennessee, you got Florida, you got Mississippi State. You got a lot of teams that would love to have him. So we'll have to see what happens as we head into this weekend, see if he announces a decision. Let's stay in the state of Mississippi, where we got A.K. Deer, the number 2 running back in America. Now, you were on this show a couple weeks ago right after he decommitted from Ole Miss. That was big, and we thought, hey, Bama might pick him up real soon. Well, it's been about 2 weeks since then. We haven't heard a whole lot. What's going on with A.K. Deer?
Yeah, I think it's status quo with him. I mean, these kids do it different. Some just straight flip, some decommit, take more visits. You saw Ivan Taylor, who can flip from Notre Dame to Michigan, take multiple visits, including to Alabama. So I guess it's to each his own. I think it's the same situation, though, where we kind of knew it was coming. Alabama was trending, and even his commitment to Ole Miss caught a lot of people by surprise. It kind of came out of the blue. Alabama had been recruiting for a while. Robert Gillespie, again, while it's a new staff and a head coach and a lot of the assistant, Robert Gillespie's been recruiting AK for several years now since he was at the Alabama staff and retained. So that relationship was there. Still feel like Alabama's did a good job. And he's a guy that's got to set a date. And he could just pop up out of the blue also. I mean, out of the blue being, in the 24-hour window, nobody really just goes anymore and catches it off guard, I don't think. But I think he's one closing in sooner rather than later on the decision.
Yeah, but sometimes these guys from Mississippi, they're a little bit more low-key. They don't really enjoy the spotlight on them. So I could see both Caleb Cunningham and AKD are maybe doing a little surprise commitment at some point. So we'll see. There's one more prospect on that Bama hit list that I want to talk about. One more player that I think could help them get to that number one spot, and he's in the state of Texas, and that's Ty Haywood, 5-star offensive tackle. And he's another one that took one of those June officials, and the experts were feeling really good about the idea of him heading to Bama. But, it's been about 3, 4, 5 weeks since we've heard from him. What's the latest on Ty Haywood and his decision?
I think that time is relative when it comes to Alabama because they had so many commitments. Once Keelan Russell on June 4th, he committed. It just seemed like they were coming, basically every day, sometimes, 2 and 2 days in a row. So it's been a while. I think Alabama did a good job there. I think FSU's battling really hard. The guy's a very elite talent. He's a guy that never really set a date. So, once a guy's set a date, when they don't set a date, he's a guy that can take his time. But what he would mean to the Alabama class is this would put this offensive line group right there near the top, possibly the best on paper offensive line class ever signed at Alabama. And that's, of course, on paper before the season started. Nick Saban obviously signed a lot of really good offensive linemen during his career there too. But, you're talking about this would give him 3 of the top 30 players in the country who are offensive linemen with Jackson Lloyd and Michael Carroll, who's now a 5-star. So that would be a really elite group. I'm still battling there for him. Still some recruiting left to go. And I'm curious to see if he pops up anywhere in that open period. That was that 4 or 5 day window they've got in July. That could be telling.
Yeah, at the end of July, we'll have to see if Ty Haywood pops up anywhere. We're going to talk about 2 more wide receivers, Derek Meadows and Cleek Lockett, here in a second. But what do you think of this Alabama coaching staff? I mean, to be at the halfway point of the recruiting cycle and to be within a commitment or two of jumping Ohio State for the number 1 class, what's kind of stood out to you, Tim, about Alabama's recruiting efforts this spring, summer?
The speculation was what it would be like after Saban. A lot of people said nobody would want the job. They wouldn't, and then when, of course, you get the guy that was in the national championship game, he didn't know how to recruit the South, which is one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. You can recruit. If you can recruit, you can recruit. They can put you in any country in the world and you'll be able to get talent. And I think that's what this staff has done really well. But it starts with effort. I mean, their spring practices with the recruits that came through, that's unprecedented as far as I'm concerned, the number of guys that came through. Their June official visitors were so big. Every week they were getting double-digit visitors and landing double-digit commitments. They had 2 guys, a punter and Micah DeBose, who committed during their official visit on a Saturday. Couldn't even wait to get to Sunday where you traditionally meet with the coach. They were just ready to rock and roll. So I think relationships, effort, and of course the Alabama's a brand. It's always been a brand. It always will be a brand. But those 3 things together, I think, has really paid dividends for them. And I'd be curious if there's any Alabama fan who thinks Alabama isn't in better shape today than they expected to be 5 or 6 months after Nick Saban retired.
Yeah, no, good point. All right, let's talk Derek Meadows and Cleek Lockett. Cleek Lockett is going to make a decision about 1 month from today. I believe it's August 7 is the commitment date for Cleek Lockett. But Derek Meadows out of Bishop Gorman in Las Vegas is set to make his decision on Saturday. He's a 6'6", 210-pound wide receiver. Not a whole lot of those size wide receivers going around this country right now, Tim. So what do you make of Derek Meadows and Cleek Lockett? Who do you think Bama has a shot at? Are they both long shots? How do you see this?
I think Bama's battling LSU for Meadows. Moving up his date's interesting because I know LSU wants to add another wide receiver. They got the number 1 quarterback in the country. Bama, again, was going in for a small class, but they wanted a very talented class. So Jamarcus Shepard did a really nice job of setting up the board. You mentioned Cleek Lockett. He's another guy I think that would actually fit in more than Meadows. He's that prototypical NFL guy as well. Probably not as fast as Caleb, but his ball skills and that elite Texas talent that he's got with him. So he's got some really good options. I think with Lockett, you're looking at Texas, and I think with Meadows, you're looking at LSU right now. And still a long way to go. I mean, 4 weeks is forever for Lockett, right? You still got some time to figure it out with Meadows, but still a lot of recruiting to be done. And in the NIL age, I mean, it's never really done. until the kid announces, and then maybe not even then.
Yeah, and like you said, you do have that open period at the end of July. We could see Khalil Lockett potentially in Tuscaloosa for a visit before that August 7 decision date. So there is a lot of time left on Khalil Lockett.
You can see him at Texas or FSU, whatever. These guys, there's a reason we've always said follow the visits.
Yeah.
Because those things kind of tell the tale. The words don't mean a lot. A lot of distractions and trying to throw us off the scent, but the actions tell a lot. And that window's open, and you can't really take 5 or 6 visits in that window like you could in June. You're going to have to narrow down where you want to go.
All right, Alabama fans, talk to us. How do we feel about these upcoming commitments? Who do you think end up on that Tide commit list? Let us know. Comment section below. Well, you've made it to the end of today's video, but there's hundreds more videos on the On3 Recruits channel for you to check out. And also, while you're here, hit subscribe.